even make an implosion bomb with uranium, though, it would take years worth of testing and development to get the implosion system right to make it work. So they couldn't race toward a bomb if they wanted to make a bomb small enough to marry to a missile to be able to deliver to anyone. So in other words, even if they withdrew from the treaty, kicked out the inspectors, and started making nukes, it's very likely that their first nuke or two would be simple, undeliverable gun-type nukes that would be not much more of a deterrent than their latent deterrent. So now Trump gets out of the deal in 2018 at Netanyahu's behest, and there were problems with the deal. It had sunset provisions in it that said, after a certain period of time, you can increase your number of centrifuges again and these other things. Now, I believe that if Trump had come in and told Netanyahu to pipe down, in his first term, and had said to the Ayatollah, now listen, I don't like this deal. It was my predecessor's deal, and I want to improve it. Let's get along. We'll take it at face value. I came into office with this agreement. Let's see if we can improve it. Let's see if we can get rid of some of these sunset provisions. Let's see if we can find a way to renegotiate the deal and make it better. He didn't do that. He just withdrew. And in consequence of that, it's actually part of the deal that Iran is allowed to stop abiding by some of the restrictions in the deal and still stay within the deal if America breaks its agreement first. And so they did. They started enriching after Israel murdered their top weapons scientist, Fakhrizadeh, his top nuclear scientist. I don't know that he was a weapons scientist at all. Their top nuclear scientist in December of 20, they started enriching up to 20% again, which is still legitimate. They need 20% enriched uranium-235 for their medical isotope reactors. But then in April, the Israelis did a sabotage mission at Natanz, and they bragged about it. They were the ones who did it. And in reaction to that, the Iranians then started enriching up to 60% uranium-235. Now, you need really above 90% to make an effective uranium atom bomb. It's technically possible to make one with above 80% enriched uranium-235. Mark Dubowitz says you can make one with 60% enriched uranium-235, but I don't think that's really right. But anyway.
What's the point of doing it then?
Typically up to 60%. Right. Good question. Because this is what you'll hear all the hawks say. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and all of them say over and over again that, what do they need the 60% for? To negotiate away. That was why. They're trying to get America back in the deal. If they had wanted to race toward weapons-grade uranium, they could have just raced toward weapons-grade uranium and enriched it up to 90%. They're going up to 60 because it makes them closer. It means their breakout time is shorter, and they're trying to put pressure on the Americans to get back into the deal, which we already had and which they are still officially a part of. And so that was why they were going up to 60%.
What do you mean they're still officially a part of it?
They're still officially part because they signed the JCPOA with France and Britain, the United States, Russia, and China, all the members of the permanent members of the UN Security Council. So they're still part of the JCPOA. It still is the law, basically. It's still the international law and their agreement. But as I said, there are subsections of the agreement itself that say that if America stops abiding by our part of it, they can stop abiding by some of the restrictions, even while remaining inside the deal. So they were really just, the purpose of the 60% was to try to force America back to the table. And Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, was so disingenuous. I saw him give a statement on the Sunday Morning News Show last week, where I guess on This Week, where he says, the only countries that have 60% uranium have nuclear weapons. Come on, man. That's just obfuscation. If we're making nuclear weapons out of uranium, it's not at 60%, which all ours are plutonium bombs anyway, but he knows what he's doing when he says that, right? He wants you to understand that Iran is racing toward a nuke without actually claiming that, because he knows it's really not true. And then there is a perfectly reasonable explanation for the 60%. It was to negotiate away. But so now Trump gives them their deadline. They pass the deadline. And I'm not exactly certain what happens, but Israel starts the war. Donald Trump comes in, a week into it, 10 days into it, and bombs Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. Isfahan is where they have the conversion facility to transform uranium ore and metal to gas and then back again. It has to be uranium hexafluoride gas is what they spin and enrich, and then they turn it back into metal. And they bombed all three of those. And I don't know for certain the extent of the damage, although I did read a report by David Albright, who's a nuclear weapons expert, who talked about they got commercial satellite footage, and he seemed to think that they had done significant damage to Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan, and all the important nuclear facilities there. So in other words, Donald J. Trump called the Ayatollah's bluff. You say you have a latent nuclear deterrent and I better not attack you or else then you might make one, which he never said that outright, but that was clearly the implication of the Iranian program. All right, well, I'm bombing your program. So now what are you going to do? And, their other bluff was that they would shoot their mid-range missiles at our bases in the Gulf region. In Qatar, we have CENTCOM headquarters at the Al Udeid Air Base there, and our 5th Fleet is stationed at Bahrain. We have tens of thousands of Army soldiers in Kuwait. And they were all essentially hostage to Iranian missiles. But when it came down to it, they didn't dare. That was their bluff. We called their bluff, and they didn't dare. What did they do? Trump dropped 14 bombs on them. They fired 14 missiles at Qatar, and they called him in advance and warned him, we're about to fire 14 missiles. Get ready to shoot them down. In other words, a purely symbolic retaliation against the United States. While they're still firing missiles at Tel Aviv, he didn't dare to hit American forces in the Gulf, not this time at least, for probably out of fear of what Donald Trump would do. Now, this is the same Ayatollah who they say can't wait to cause the apocalypse and nuke Israel. Even if every last Iranian gets nuked off the face of the earth, he doesn't care because he wants the end of the world. And yet he doesn't dare pick a fight with Donald Trump and telegraphs, I do not want to fight you every chance that he gets with the American superpower. So now where does that leave us? Either I've been right for 15, 20 years, warning that if we bomb them, that is the most likely thing to cause them to then now race for a nuke. Or Trump is right, and he has just degraded their program so severely that there's no point in even restarting it again. He's got the credible threat that he'll just start bombing it again if they try. And so his position seems to be, I think he said, I don't need a new nuclear deal because there's no nuclear there. Now, I'm not certain that's true, that he's completely decimated what they have. But I guess, as we're recording this, it very much remains to be seen what is the long-term reaction of the Iranians, or whether they are now going to weaponize their latent program. They've already kicked all the inspectors out of the country. And I saw this headline, and I don't know the entire story here, but a lower cleric, not the supreme leader, but a lower cleric has now issued a fatwa for President Trump, like they did to Salman Rushdie, order on his life, which I know a great journalist named Ken Silva, who's really put the lie to and showed and debunked these kind of FBI hoaxes about these Iranian assassination plots against Trump. They're really not true. And Ken Silva is the guy's name. He's an excellent reporter from Headline USA. And the Institute, we're going to publish his book about the assassination attempts against Trump that he's working on now. And he's really debunked those, but I don't think there's really much debunk in this other than that this public statement came from a lower level cleric who I guess could be overridden by the Ayatollah if the Ayatollah would be so wise as to say, actually, we didn't mean that, and try to find a way to move forward, because a death threat against a very credible threat like that against the life of the President of the United States is the kind of thing to absolutely solidify American support for even further war against their country.
Of course.
A huge error for them to say that.
The question is, who's the guy who issued it? Is it meaningful? Does it in any sense?
Yeah, can it be walked back?
Yeah, does he speak for the religious authorities of Iran or not? I don't know the answer, but I agree. That's nuts. Don't